Life came into existence anywhere between hundreds of billions of years to say 6,000 years ago, depending on who you ask. We're not really going to get into that at the moment, but what you do need to know is that whether you believe life was a result of natural forces colliding, the handiwork of a god or gods, or you don't believe life even really exists, because reality isn't even truly here, one thing still remains sure. There is a magazine published somewhere on this planet by other people who agree with you.
De l'homme auquel j'appartiens, quand il me prend dans ses bras, qu'il me parle tout bas.
The first magazines appeared in France in the form of a bookseller catalog that book publishers inserted into newspapers. In fact, today's word magazine is derived from the French term magasin, meaning storehouse. Let's move up a little north of there. Top of the morning, Governor! It's London, and the first political magazine, The Review, comes out in 1704, about the same time as The Tatler and Spectator, magazines which published poetry, philosophy, and politics elite. Not much going on for magazines in colonial America, though, despite Ben Franklin's attempts in Philadelphia, even after America kicked King George's royal ass. Magazines weren't really catching on. But as the 1820s rolled around, it turned out God had some plans for magazines in America after all, and many religious magazines gained popularity, such as the Methodist Christian Journal and Advocate, which both claimed 25,000 subscribers in 1826. And in that fashion, other specialized magazines sprang up too. American Farmer, American Journal of Educators, American Journal of Science, American Law Journal, American... well, you get the picture.
America!
Also, literary magazines at the time established great authors like Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, and Mark Twain. But what really got things going was the Saturday Evening Post, which aimed to address the whole nation. Even women! Turned out magazines for women was a pretty good idea. By the 1860s, Godey's Ladies' Books, a magazine specifically for women, had the biggest circulation ever for a US magazine, 150,000. The 1800s were a pretty good time for magazines across the country. Magazines were on the rise. Boom! Turn of the century. We got a lot better at making stuff fast, and thanks to the post office, reduced rates passing out magazines was super cheap. Now, even the working class could get magazines. And advertising went crazy. With so many people reading magazines, the publishers could make a lot more selling advertisement spots. And the ladies did it again with Ladies' Home Journal, the first magazine to reach a circulation of 1 million. Now that magazines had readers, they needed to keep them. So they embarked on yellow journalism and began the crusade for social reform against the issues of the day. As great social change took place in America, a lot of newspaper writers just weren't happy writing nice little columns in the paper and wanted to go into depth in magazines. President Teddy Roosevelt wasn't much of a fan and labeled them muckrakers, because they'd find stories in the muck of society. These muckrakers had a good amount of influence, and their writing actually led to antitrust laws, fair and progressive income tax, and the direct election of U.S. senators. Following World War I, the trend of yellow journalism was essentially reversed, as magazines became much more concerned with reaching a broad national audience. These were the general interest magazines. The Saturday Evening Post romanticized American virtues thanks to the help of Norman Rockwell's illustrated covers. Reader's Digest rehabilitated the use of magazines as a storehouse for collective of literary works and their condensed versions. Time magazine developed a brand of interpretive journalism, where the reporter's findings would be given in narrative form and point of view by the editor. Life magazine became iconic through its use of photojournalism and the power of images to chronicle events of ordinary and extraordinary events. Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. Then TV came and turned the whole magazine world upside down all over again. Sure, TV Guide was a huge success in the 1990s, but many other magazines like the Saturday Evening Post, Look, and Life died off. Competition from television for ad dollars and a skyrocket in postal service rates were their doom. What did survive were women's magazines that were generally bought at the supermarket checkout rather than by mail-delivered subscription. As television sucked in the masses, magazines had to turn to a different approach: the niche market.
After all the jets are in the box.
Exhibit A, Playboy magazine. Not so widespread or family-friendly, but offered a very specific niche male audience to advertisers. And while magazines like Women's Day and Better Homes and Gardens follow the successful formula of banking on the image of women as homemakers and consumers, social change in the 70s brought about women's magazines such as Cosmopolitan, which were much more concerned with feminism, sexuality, career, and politics. The variety of magazines continues to expand. It can be found in almost any niche interest or subject matter. You name it, it's there. Magazines for sports people, magazines for music people, magazines for young people, magazines for old people, magazines for elite people, magazines for African American people, magazines for LGBT people, magazines for Hispanic people, magazines for really, really gullible people. Today's magazines go after every niche market or group of people out there. And magazines aren't just in print anymore, they're online too. Call them webzines. They can be an extension of a print magazine such as Time or Entertainment Weekly, or a magazine that exists solely online like Salon or Slate. Now that you know the history about magazines, here's a little bit about how they work. No matter how large or small, all magazines have to deal with production, content, ads, and sales. The big dogs usually have several departments to take care of all this. The editorial department produces all the content. The production and technology department handles printing, or they ship it off digitally to an off-site printer. The advertising and sales department get out and make some moolah, selling spots in the magazine. And it can be some major cash too, as much as $320,000 for a full-page color ad. Cha-ching! But who is making all this major dough? Mostly major magazine chains. Just like in TV or film, there are only a handful of big players. Time Inc. is a subsidiary of Time Warner. Advanced Publications. Hasset Filipacci, a subsidiary of the Garter Group. The French still got it going on with magazines. The Meredith Corporation and the Hearst Corporation. But what is the impact of magazines as a form of mass media? Have they lost their power to create a national identity? Have they made us into consumers and viewers only? Do they offer freedom and voice to minorities? These are the questions you must reach deep down into your souls and your notes to answer. Let the discussion begin!